Hi, this is Vanessa with Designs by Vanessa. In this video we are making a coffee sleeve. Okay, so it looks like this with this beautiful stitch. It is worked in the round, and this video is actually to help assist my latest pattern. This is the Daisy Slouch Beanie. So this will provide instructions on how to work this stitch in the round, which will be linked from the pattern. Okay, so you'll need some yarn. If you're making the sleeve, you can use any weight yarn you want and then use the recommended hook size for that yarn. This is just worsted weight. It is Caron. This is a 1 pounder I purchased to make a crochet pillow cover, and it was just leftover yarn, and it is the color golden yellow. And I'm using a 5.5 millimeter crochet hook. I got this one from Hobby Lobby. You'll need a pair of scissors, a needle, tapestry needle to weave in your ends, and a stitch marker to mark the beginning of your round. Okay, so let's get started. So I'm going to start with a slip knot. So I'm going to just chain an even number of stitches. Okay, so I chained 24 stitches. It gave me the circumference I needed, so just measure your cup or your mug or whatever you're making it for. And then you want to join your round, so make sure your stitches are not twisted. See, this is the flat side, that's the bumpy side. Okay, so you just want to join to the first stitch, the first chain stitch, work a slip stitch. So insert your hook into that first chain stitch, yarn over, pull through, and pull through. Okay, so I have my round. I'm ready to start round 1. So to start, you want to chain 1. And now we're going to be working 3 stitches at a time. So we're doing a single crochet 3 together. It's really a decrease stitch, so we're doing a single crochet 3 together. Starting with the very first stitch right there, you want to insert your hook, yarn over, and pull up a loop. Okay, you want to repeat for the next 2. Insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, and pull up a loop. One more time. Insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, and pull up a loop. Okay, you should have 4 loops on your hook, yarn over, and pull through all 4. And then you want to chain 1. Okay, so you're working this same stitch all the way around. So the trick is when you start your next cluster, we'll call this a cluster, you want to start in the stitch that you last worked in. So the third stitch right here is where you'll start. Okay, so insert your hook into this stitch right here, which was the third stitch from my previous cluster. So insert your hook, yarn over, and draw up a loop. Into the next 2 stitches, you're going to do the same thing. Insert your hook, yarn over, draw up a loop. Into the next stitch, insert your hook, yarn over, draw up a loop. Again with 4 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 4, and then chain 1. Okay, so you're just working a cluster of single crochet 3 together all the way around, always starting in the last stitch used. So here's the last stitch. I want to start with that stitch, so insert your hook, yarn over, draw up a loop. Okay, into the next stitch, yarn over, draw up a loop, and the next stitch, yarn over, and draw up a loop. With 4 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 4, chain 1. Okay, the next cluster, starting with the last stitch that was used. Insert your hook, yarn over, drop a loop, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, drop a loop, again one more time into the next one, yarn over and drop a loop. With 4 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 4 loops. Chain 1. Okay, it's pretty simple. Just remember to start in the last stitch you worked in. Okay, first one, second one, and third one. You should have 4 loops, yarn over and pull through all 4, chain 1. When you chain 1, try to chain loosely, because you will be working into those stitches on your next round, so make sure you keep your stitches loose when you chain 1, because that stitch can get pretty tight and it'll be hard to work into. So again, next cluster, starting with the last stitch that you worked in, drop a loop to the next stitch, drop another loop, and finally in the third stitch, drop a loop. 4 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 4. Okay, oops, don't forget to chain 1. Okay, so I'll continue repeating that all the way around. Okay, so I put a stitch marker here to mark the first stitch. I forgot to do that when we first started. The very last cluster is a little tricky. So you're going to work in the last stitch of this cluster. Okay, so that one. And right here is actually the very last stitch of the round. And then the third one that you're going to go into is actually going to be the very first one that you worked into from the first cluster. Okay, so insert your hook into the stitch you last worked in, yarn over, drop a loop, insert your hook into the next stitch, which is your very last stitch of the round, and then into the very first stitch that you worked in from the first cluster. Yarn over, pull through all 4 loops, chain 1, and then right there where your stitch marker is where you want to work your slip stitch. So insert your hook, drop a loop, and pull through the loop on your hook. Okay, so that's your first round. Okay, so we're ready for round 2. So you see these 3 stitches? That was your 3 stitch cluster, so your single crochet 3 together. You want to slip stitch to the very top of that to start your round 2, and that's what you'll do for every following round. So now you want to chain 1. Again, you want to work single crochet 3 together in the first 3 stitches. First one is right there where you started with your chain 1. The second one is right here, it's usually the longer stitch. And the third one will be on top of the next clusters, which is the smaller stitch. Okay, insert your hook into the same stitch as your chain 1, yarn over, drop a loop, into the next stitch, yarn over, drop a loop, into the next stitch, yarn over, and drop a loop. With 4 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 4, chain 1. So right there, that was the very first stitch. That's the chain 1. I'll place the stitch marker there. Okay, so just like the last round, you're going to work single crochet 3 together, so the cluster. So the first stitch will be the last stitch worked, middle stitch, and third stitch. So insert your hook, yarn over, drop a loop, into the next stitch, yarn over, drop a loop, and then into the third stitch, yarn over and draw up a loop. Yarn over, draw through all 4 and chain 1. The way I look at it is you always start with the small stitch, and then the larger, longer stitch is in the middle, and then the smaller stitch on top of the next cluster is the third one. Okay, first stitch, yarn over, draw up a loop. Second stitch, yarn over, draw up a loop. Third stitch, yarn over, draw up a loop. Yarn over and pull through all 4, chain 1. And that's why I cautioned about chaining too tightly, because you will work in there twice. So those are the smaller chains. Okay, the next cluster, into this same stitch you just worked into, yarn over, draw up a loop. Into the next stitch, yarn over, draw up a loop. To the next stitch, yarn over, draw up a loop. Yarn over and pull through all 4 and chain 1. Okay, so go ahead and work that all the way around. Okay, so again, we're near the end, and the last one is a little tricky. So this is the last stitch we worked in. So for the last cluster, we're going to work into that stitch, this stitch, which is the last one of the round, and then you see right here where this last, let me take this out, where the 3 stitches come down, the very first one, there's a stitch right there. That's where you will work the 3rd stitch from the cluster. Okay, so insert your hook into that last stitch you just used, yarn over, draw up a loop, into the next stitch, yarn over, draw up a loop, and then into this stitch here from the first stitch of the cluster, work your 3rd stitch, yarn over and pull through all 4. Don't forget to chain 1. And then that was your first stitch. That's where you slip stitch to join. And then don't forget to slip stitch 1 more just to get to the top of that cluster. That's where you will start for round 3. Okay, so now you just repeat round 2 until you get the size you want. So I think I'll do about 3 more. Chain 1, work your first cluster into the first stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, into the next, draw up a loop, and the 3rd, draw up a loop, and chain 1. Place my stitch marker on the first stitch. Okay, so this very first one, that's where you'll end your last cluster. Alright, repeat round 2 until you have the size you want, or for another maybe 3 rounds. Okay, so I actually worked 4 more rounds, and I just slip stitch to join. I'm going to cut my yarn, leaving a tail so I can sew it in, and then just pull that through. Okay, so just weave in your ends on the inside. Okay, so there you have your little coffee sleeve. Okay. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you did, and don't forget to subscribe for future videos.